Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're really glad that you're here today, whether you're watching us live, even though this is a pre-recorded show, and I'll try to remind you of that because you'll wonder why we're not answering any of your questions. It's because this is pre-recorded. Or if you're listening to it on any one of the audio outlets that we are broadcast on, or if you're listening to us in Atlanta on WDJY FM radio, we're really happy that you decided to join the audience today because you make the show.
Indeed, we are. And speaking of all those things you can listen and watch on, Thursdays, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time here in the U.S., you can either go to WDJYFM.com and watch on your computer, or listen if you live in the Atlanta area, and we're broadcasting on 99.1 FM. Saturdays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time each week, Episode Rewind, where we replay old episodes. And then next Wednesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, just like now. Every week, you'll have a live show. So those are the times and the places. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We need every subscriber we can get, right?
I know. We've had, 86,000 downloads, 600,000 listeners in a quarter, and 261 subscribers.
Yeah, so we need to boost that up a little. So
you're listening
hit
and
that
watching.
Subscribe button,
so
and then
please
keep watching.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching.
All sorts
and
of
listening.
insights from wonderful authors.
Mm-hmm.
So, without further ado,
yes, let's bring on our guest.
Okay, and we want to introduce Penelope Holt. Welcome.
Hi, Penelope.
Inviting me.
Thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Very well. Looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah. Weekends are always good. I don't know, though. We're retired, so we're always busy.
Yeah.
We have no excuse of we can't do that. We have work. We're constantly.
You always still get that feeling, though, like from childhood when you knew the weekend was coming and it was freedom. So I think it always stays with you.
And we can spend time with our family who all still work. And even our grandchildren are old enough to be working. And so they have the weekend off, and we can.
Some of them do. Yeah.
So, some of them work weekends too. That's true. But at least we see a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you eventually decided to write?
I was born in England. I always loved reading. I was a crazy reader. I used to love the summer holidays with a big pile of books. Just, my mother would say, go outside, get some fresh air. I said, I'm reading this book. And I studied literature and linguistics at the University of York. I was a playwright, a young, aspiring playwright. I had some work produced at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and the York Arts Centre. And I emigrated to New York. It's a long story, but I wound up in New York and worked at the American Folk Theatre. And it's just very difficult to make a living writing creatively. So I started freelancing in PR and started doing business writing, marketing, advertising, book PR actually, and then ghostwriting and co-authoring books primarily for business. And you asked me earlier if I was what was it you said, a plotter?
A pantser or a plotter? Yeah.
And when I was writing business books, I was a plotter, obviously, because I was working with someone. I had to keep it very organized, keep them organized. If they were new to writing, I had to sort of be their co-pilot, their co-author. But when I'm writing fiction, I'm a pantser. So I'm sort of ambidextrous. I'm a plotter. So I think I always say that if you want to write, then you have to write every day. And in business, that gave me the discipline of constantly being a wordsmith, and then just published a lot with a lot of materials. I mean, on a good year, I'll write 100 to 150,000 words. Just as a matter of course in business. But then as my children were getting older, I created more space to do the creative fiction writing that I love. And so I'm able to spend more and more of my time doing that, which is great. And then that brings me into a community of other writers and people like you who are on the same wavelength. So I enjoy business. I've succeeded there. It's been very good to me. I've made a good living, but they're not really my tribe in the sense of, may not have the sensibilities that you find with fiction writers and that community, and just the level of creativity and imagination and exploration that goes on. So not only writing the book, but, talking to people like you and having these great conversations has been very incentivizing and motivating, because writing can be lonely too.
Yes.
And I never realized, I think because I've been so immersed in business and my commitments there, that I would say to any writer, be part of a writer community, because you need it. You need that sparking off each other and the conversation. And it's very nourishing, isn't it?
Yes. We belong to a group, and it's very helpful. And we have publicized other authors for a lot of years. So yeah, the amazing thing to me is how gracious and helpful authors are one to the other. I think it's amazing, maybe more than any other community of people. Most everyone wants to help and give you an assist, but you really had a leg up if you were already promoting other books before you got into writing your creative fictional books, because I think for most of us, you write the book and you think, okay, I've written the book, and then you realize, whoa, now what? And I think that's very difficult for most authors to realize the marketing, what goes into it. And I mean, really, it takes up a lot of your time, unless you're fortunate enough and you can hire a PR firm that like you belong to, and and then they can do that for you. So
yeah, but it's a classic. It really is a classic example of cobbler's children have no shoes. Spend my career pushing other people and, get out there and, because I find with the people I've worked with that everyone has that natural modesty or uncertainty, or they question themselves. I mean, if they're sort of worthwhile, humble people, they do. And it's my job to pump them up with 500 pounds of air and say, get out there, you're good, and instill that confidence. It's very hard to do that for yourself. And so while I know all of the strategies and all of the tactics, and I've made book videos and book tours for people and press releases, I really do hit a wall when it comes to myself. And I think that this time I broke down and I reached out and I got help and said, can you do for me what I do for other people? Because seemingly I can't do it for myself. And I'm really glad that I did, because I think, it's always not always possible from a budget standpoint, but I think it's, you want to be people are torn, right? When they're marketing their books, they want to be the writer, but then they also have to put on the other hat and be the promoter. So it's like they say in show business, there's the show and then there's the business, and they're sort of conflicting roles a little bit. But I think as people practice it and get used to it, it's kind of like doing this, right? It's just something that you got to do. You've just got to learn to do it and set small goals for yourself to make sure that you're on the path to learning how to market your own work, because it's such a shame to invest all of that time and that energy into a book and then really for it never to see the light of day or to really not go find the audience. And I think that in marketing, we talk about targeting, which is really tapping into the communities that will enjoy your genre, right? Because you spin your wheels trying to be everywhere at once. It's better to have 15 people hear a podcast who are voracious about the stuff you're writing about than to reach 350 people who have no interest, or 1,000 people who have no interest in it at all, right?
That's right, because it's falling on deaf ears and they're not going to do anything with it. You touched on something, though, that I think is really important, in that you said most of us are modest and we don't want to self-promote. And that really is a hurdle, I think, for most authors to get over. You have to self-promote. Because if you're an author and you've written this book, if it's a fictional book, you've laughed and you've cried as you're writing it because, goodness, if you're not feeling what your characters are feeling, your reader isn't going to either. So I think most of us, will find ourselves laughing out loud when we write a funny part or crying when we write a sad part. At least we do. We're co-authors. And so you love that book and you love those characters and you think it's a good book. And you should be able to tell people, this is a really good book. It's interesting. It's fun, it's sad, it's education, whatever it is, you need to get over that thing of not self-promoting,
Yeah. And I think because I am a marketer and I really understand segmentation, that one woman's trash is another woman's treasure.
Yes.
I really understand that it's the rare book that crosses over and has, very, very massive and wide appeal. And I used to joke with this one when I started promoting, I'd say, I know it will land with many readers who are like-minded and they will love it because I basically wrote a book that I would love to read myself. And I said the ones who don't, they can start a bonfire with it. And my husband said, please stop saying that. Please start saying everybody should run out and buy this book. Everybody's going to love it. It's for everybody. And he's got a point, right? That you do have to kind of get out there and lead your own parade. And something that I did with this book, I'm used to writing and I'm used to writing with other people and sort of being in the background or, get an author credit or a co-author or just be a ghostwriter. But Andy Warhol famously said, you make art and you put it out there. And I think actors and actresses who have reached sort of a pinnacle of success, they understand this. They very often won't go back and watch their own work. And, he said, put it out there, let people say what they want, and then go make more art.
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you can associate too closely with your work and be afraid of the criticism, or you have to get that thick skin where, someone trashes. Some people can be very unkind and, trash work and say, well, I guess that means you don't like it, moving on and really just not to take it personally, because it is a journey. I don't think any author reads previous work and doesn't want to change it in some way. You learn, you become more experienced, more expert, and you go back. Even I do. And this book, I went through it over and over and over and over, and I turned it in until I'd read it through once and couldn't find anything. And then sure enough, as soon as it was published, I was like, oh, I want to change this. I want to change that.
Happens to everybody. Absolutely everybody. This book is the book we're talking about, The Angel Scroll, Prophecy, Destiny, and Love. That's a very interesting title and subtitle. Do you want to tell us a little bit about The Angel Scroll? Or?
Yeah, I was very impressed by, years ago when it came out, I can't believe it's over 25 years now, the Da Vinci Code.
Yep.
I just thought it was the perfect sort of scavenger hunt. It had these fringe religious beliefs about Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and it incorporated all of these real sort of Opus Dei, all of these sort of mysterious religious stories and artifacts, and of course it was thrilling. It was this tumble around Europe with bad guys, and it had like the hints of the miraculous, and it captured my imagination. I thought, I want to write a book like that. That's because it weaves together. I wanted to weave together all of the sort of metaphysical studying that I'd done, and exploration, and looking into different paranormal, spiritual occurrences. And so I found out about this new Dead Sea Scroll that was allegedly discovered in 1999 called the Angel Scroll. And it was supposed to be, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947. Long story short, it was in the Jerusalem Post. It was widely written up. And then after a few years, they sort of said, we don't really think it exists. We've seen drawings and we've spoken to people, but we can't pin it down. We can't really locate the scrolls, so we're debunking it. But at that point, I took it as the basis of the book. I thought, what if the scroll emerges with a prophecy that prophesizes 3 transformational paintings that when you put them together, they'll create miracles for the new age, and they will have signs. They'll be warm to the touch. They'll be healing when you look at them, and they will be created by amateurs because they'll be channeled. And so the book, there's that scavenger hunt around Israel and Europe looking for the paintings. And then it's the story of Claire Lucas, who is one of the painters. She paints this masterpiece after her husband dies. She begins to have strange experiences, visions, dreams, and she doesn't know what's happening to her. So it's partly looking for the paintings, then, the prophecy of the scroll, but it's also her journey meeting different spiritual. She meets a Buddhist monk and a Benedictine monk and an anthropologist who studies goddess worship. And they're all giving her different explanations for these supernatural experiences that she's having. And so I think for people who seek, they read about different spiritual paths, maybe new age things, or they're deep in their own faith tradition. Everybody's seeking. Everybody wants answers to the big questions in life. And as you and I were talking before we came on, it's a call to believe in miracles.
Yeah, your book is.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I think everybody wants to believe in miracles. They're afraid to because they don't want to appear naive or easily, duped. But I think miracles do happen, and the more you're open to them, the more they occur. And the book is about the believing in miracles and experiencing miracles.
You mentioned studying metaphysical, and it was interesting because we had a psychiatrist on who's written books, and he was part of the Jesus people like we were. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up becoming Christians and landing in that. And he came through that and saw the same things that we did and ended up landing in the metaphysical. Yeah. But we all believe the same thing.
Yes.
It's just the path that you're walking. That's why the 2 monks and the anthropologist all had different ideas, because they're each walking their own path, right? Yeah. And I just think we're at a point now, and I think the world is really heading this way of we're spiritual, we're not religious, and a lot of people are spiritual, and just to be accepting of, all the different belief systems, because they're all fascinating and they all have their own truths. And a lot of those truths are actually the same truths. If you look at them, you're all believing the same thing. You're just expressing it differently or experiencing it differently, if you know what I mean.
I do. As a child, I would often hear that it's the same view through different windows.
Yeah, that's a good way
to put it.
That is a good way to put it.
Well, speaking of a same view from different windows, we do have to take a break for our sponsors. And so we'll be back in a few minutes, folks. When we come back, Penelope is going to read a little section from the Angel Scrolls. So hang on. Got a lot to talk about.
It's 1919. and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. Two new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Now comes part 4 in the Jaguar series by retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. In this saga, Brandon, Andrea, and Naja, the Black Jaguar, go deep into the Mato Grosso jungle on a mission to rescue 2 kidnapped children. During their journey, they encounter many dangers, including Yanomami Indians, bent on revenge for the murder of one of their warriors.
Return of the Jaguar is book 4 in the Jaguar series, starting with 2 faces of the Jaguar, the Lost City, and the Jaguar's Quest. All 4 are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookseller websites worldwide. Return of the Jaguar is a must-read.
And we're back.
Indeed.
And we're glad that you all stayed with us, and you're back too. Oh, sorry. I just went to bring your book up and I switched to the wrong page.
There it is.
I never do that.
Yeah.
So Penelope's going to read from the Angel Scroll, but we also wanted you to see this, The Apple. It's based on the Herman Rosenblat Holocaust love story. That sounds really fascinating to me too. Mm-hmm. And you have a third book that, yes.
This is more a business book. It's Emotional Intelligence at Work. It's a personal operating system for career success. It's really about understanding how emotions drive business. People tend to think they don't. They think they're going in and dealing with rational people all the time, rational thinking. And of course you are up to a point, but never underestimate how much destructive emotion influences the outcome of things and your life at work.
Yeah, that's important. If someone doesn't like you,
well, they keep writing the petty tyrant boss, the difficult employee. They know that there are a lot of sociopaths among top management CEOs. People who lack empathy do very well. Yeah, people who manipulate do very well. And I think if you're not attuned that way, it can be difficult to spot, right? Mm-hmm. And there's some people can be too agreeable. They can get run over, not negotiate for themselves, wind up resentful, act out that kind of resentment. Yeah. You have to have a healthy sense of entitlement. And if people are getting ahead because they're able to go in and showcase their work and how good they are and ask for a raise and you're getting left behind, then you have to look and say, am I doing a good job of representing myself? I'm not a child. I have to, assert myself in the world. So there's just a lot of different, case studies and how to think about it, and really to just be, have, what's that? They used to say the three A's were awareness, acceptance, and action. Become aware of it, accept that it's going on, and then take action on how you're going to participate in figuring out that piece of your career.
If you're in corporate America, people, buy this book. It'll help you.
I love how simple it is with the nice turquoise. Is my favorite colors. It's got a nice big exclamation point.
It's my color also, my favorite color also, in case you couldn't tell.
That used to be the color of my kitchen until quite recently.
Okay, well, let's get into the Angel Scroll. Would you mind reading from it?
I'm just going to read 2 pages, and I think it'll set up our discussion about grabbers. The Apple, my book about the Holocaust, was on a list, I think, of a San Francisco publication that said it had one of the best opening lines. I think it's really important to have, obviously, people read the first couple of pages of your book and decide whether they want to continue reading or not. So I'm just going to read the first 2 pages of this book because and why I wrote them this way. It deals with some historical fringe ideas that Jesus visited India during the hidden years between 12 and 30 when he began his religious ministry. So these are the first 2 pages. Chapter 1, Dreams. In Benares, India, the sweltering night dragged on. Moonlight slid through the bedroom window and bathed the young Christ-like figure who sat cross-legged on the floor. Only a loincloth covered his slender hips, and his long, coarse hair was coiled in a top knot on his crown. He'd been watching the young woman on the low bed for hours. She was feverish, her breathing shallow, as she squinted at him now through half-closed lids. Her husband held her hand and shot the young man a pleading look. Please let her live. I'm a rich man. I can pay you. I can help the poor of Benares, the poor of India. To thwart death is not to conquer it, the young master said. And the husband buried his head in the bed's embroidered cover. In a single fluid movement, the holy man rose and stroked his host's spent head, his long, graceful fingers raking the dark, slick with perfumed oil, revealing a channel of pale, moist scalp. Beyond the bedroom, in the narrow hallway, the master found his 3 companions propped against a wall and dozing. He tapped the closest with a callous foot, and one by one the sleeping men awoke. Is she well now? The tall one asked, stretching. She will be dead come dawn, his master whispered, as the 4 men stepped into the dusty and deserted Indian night. The phone rang. Claire Lucas woke up and realized her face was wet. She'd been crying again. She eyed the clock, 9 a.m. She cleared her throat, picked up the phone, and tried to sound awake. Hello? You still sleeping? Claire held the phone away from her ear to stop Deirdre Vetch's whine from piercing her brain. You're coming to the gallery to talk about the painting, right? We must talk. Deirdre's verbal pummeling began. It's not for sale. Sell something else. Claire pulled herself into a sitting position on the bed. The buyers don't want anything else. They want the miracle. Absent a miracle, Claire corrected her agent again. The name of the painting is Absent a Miracle. I know what the painting is called, Claire. I also know it's the best thing you've done, and we could retire on what the latest buyer is offering for it. Sell the others. They're no good, Deirdre blurted out, and then caught herself. I didn't mean that. Your work is good, all of it, most of it. But Absent a Miracle is unique. It shows the others up as what? Amateurish? Claire winced. Talk about not pulling your punches. Deirdre could be brutal. No, not amateurish. Deirdre groped for the right words. They're good abstracts, very promising. But Absent a Miracle is powerful. It's a modern masterpiece. I have to go. Claire felt exhausted, disoriented by the recurring dream that had been disrupting her sleep and upsetting her for months. How many times had it come? She'd lost count, but enough for her to memorize it and depict the dream perfectly in her painting, the one that Deirdre was itching to sell. The dream always made Claire sad for the husband and wife she didn't know. They needed a miracle from the young holy man, but he just watched their ordeal and he did nothing. Deirdre kept pressing her. You've got to come to the gallery. I'll come later, Claire relented. I can't talk now. I'm expecting someone. She glanced at the clock. In 30 minutes, I have to go. She hung up without saying goodbye. It wasn't like her to be rude, but boy, Deirdre was annoying.
That was really good.
Good.
That was definitely a hook.
Yeah, now I want to see what happened.
Well, yeah, you don't know that she's having a dream.
No.
You think you're there in India, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, she's been dreaming this. That's really good.
Thank you.
So, now I want to know what happens. And that's why you wrote it that way.
Yeah. So there's dreams and miracles and paintings and masterpieces, channeled paintings, all in the first 2 pages, which are teeing up because she begins to have these dreams, these visions that, are they real? Are dreams real? Are they as real as waking dreams? So it begins to tease out some of the questions that get explored as the book proceeds.
Interesting. What do you think?
Well, like you, I went to convent school and was baptized into Catholicism when I was about 13. And it had a very good effect on me. I enjoyed it. But I got very interested in Buddhism and dream yoga and lucid dreaming, and the idea that nighttime dreams and daytime dreams, they're both dreams. One is just a little more stable and consensual than the other. And it really led me to the idea, and I don't know for certain. I mean, I'm not here to be certain and to grandstand and tell other people what to think, because like you said, it's all about finding your own path, especially now. I mean, the 20th century was marked by somewhat the decline of religion, but it was more conventional and people went to church, and, it was sort of a surround sound of traditional religious practices. In the 21st century, to your point, that's kind of breaking down. Those grand narratives are breaking down, and people are still have a thirst for God or the truth or the high power. And now they have many different avenues to explore and piece it together. And I think that's very legitimate. But where I come out is that, I believe that consciousness is fundamental, and we experience everything through consciousness. And therefore, I'm a deep believer in experience. And I think people have supernatural or psychic experiences. And then they start, like Claire, they start looking for explanations, and the explanations vary and contradict one another. But to me, the bottom line is, I just want to know what another person has experienced.
Mm-hmm. Because that's always interesting.
Well, not only that it's interesting, but there's a truth to it.
Well, you learn something.
Yes.
It can be reaffirming too.
It can be very reaffirming. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I think, whether you want to say the divine, God, the universe, sets us up for those affirmations. It happens to us all the time, where another person will say, I see this about you. And it's something that you're like, whoa, well, okay.
Yeah. I don't know why we've closed down the sort of the broad notes on the piano. And, we were talking about now with the internet, gate information, people are not gatekeeping information. And I've seen scores and scores of near-death. I know you had one too, Joan, near-death experiences.
Yeah.
They echo each other. Sometimes they're almost identical.
Yeah.
And how many, I'm not saying anyone has to believe them, but when you're hearing hundreds and hundreds of people explaining these, recounting these experiences, then at what point do you say, if I said to you, oh, I had a ham sandwich for lunch today, you'd probably believe me. It's okay to believe that I had a ham sandwich for lunch, right? It's perfectly conventional and normal and banal. But if someone says, I had a near-death experience, then this little flag goes up and says, oh, that's too exotic. That's too fringe. It's maybe dangerous to listen to that. And that's just silly. And it will disrupt my sensible life, my sensible belief system. So I'm very curious. And I'm very curious and very open to hearing people's experiences that are extraordinary in the sense that they're just out of the ordinary, run-of-the-mill experiences that we all have day to day.
Well, I had my near-death experience in a hospital because I was moving to Mexico, and this was more than 50 years ago. And I was in my 20s, and you had to have certain vaccinations in order to enter another country and then come back to your own country. And so first I'd had typhoid, and the next round was paratyphoid. And so 2 weeks later, I went in for my paratyphoid shot, and I went into anaphylactic shock. As a matter of fact, I can't have any normal type of vaccines because the CDC said, the carrier, whatever the carrier is, that's probably what caused the anaphylactic shock, and it's not worth, you dying again to have another vaccine. So, but I was clinically dead, and I actually saw myself being resuscitated. After I had traveled around the hospital, I heard my grandmother and my aunt talking. I was able to tell them their conversation exactly. And people seem to like this. One of my dogs who came out of the light and greeted me, not a family member, one of my pets. So if you're wondering, yeah, they're there, or they're waiting for us. That's the best news for me. And, I told the doctors afterwards, this is what I saw, this is what I heard, and they told me that it had been lack of oxygen to my brain, and also because I was in anaphylactic shock, which meant I'd been convulsing for probably 45 minutes before I, had my near-death experience. They had shot me full of morphine. So they said between the morphine and the lack of oxygen that my brain had made all this up. So I never talked to anybody about it. I kept it quiet. And then I remember one time I was watching Oprah Winfrey, and she had on, this was years later, many years later, when I was maybe in my 40s or something, I think. And she had on a person who had a near-death experience, and it was almost identical to mine. And so I said to him, oh my gosh, I saw today this show, and told him that had happened. So that was, I'm in my late 70s now. So that was 30 years ago, right? That when people first started talking about it. But what you said now is absolutely true. You can Google near-death experiences and find podcasts all over the place where people are talking about that. And they're all not exactly the same. Everybody has their own journey, but so similar that you just know, okay, they experienced what I experienced.
Yeah, and if you can be skeptical I just know, I think almost everyone that I've watched, if it's not real, whatever that is, it's certainly real to them.
Right.
And everything, but we live in the world of experience of what is real to us, right?
Yes. Right. We can get into all kinds of things talking about the Akashic records and say, well, that's what it is. Everybody's tapping into that, the universal mind. There's all different kinds of explanations for it. And I love hearing about them all. I want to hear it all.
Maybe you'd like to hear from our
commercial
sponsors.
Yeah. Okay. Time for our
Sorry
second
to
set
have to
of
break that
commercials.
up, but we need to take a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back, folks. Don't go away.
An unforgettable mystery thriller that will transport you back to 17th century England. Introducing Dream of Courage, facing fear head-on, your passport to 17th century mystery, mayhem, and murder. Follow Robert and John Rushworth through Leeds' bustling Briggate district, where danger lurks in the shadows, embodied by the thief-taker Jacob Wilding. You will laugh, you will cry, and be in awe of the twists and turns. Its meticulous attention to character development, emotional nuance, and the unfolding of the story's layers promise a compelling and emotionally charged journey. The U.S. National Times said, "Modern writers usually don't know what it was like to live in the past, but Rushworth Brown does this with great skill." Uncover the secrets of Smythe, the enigmatic tavern keeper who sends Robert to the Haven, to the pirate Captain Girlington. Will he outweed danger in the nick of time?
Have you wanted to publish your story? Have you thought about self-publishing? Today is your day. 5-star Amazon review. Self-publish your ebook on Amazon for free in 2024. This ebook is available on Amazon by Becca L. Jones.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
And we're back. Yeah,
Yes, we are.
it's all fascinating. I think the Angel Scroll sounds fabulous. It'd be fun to follow her journey and see where it takes her, you know. It takes the reader. You get to go along for the ride. Here's where you can reach Penelope. And I should have explained this to you when we did our little pre-show, but this right now this is a live video broadcast, but of course then tomorrow it'll become audio over, you know, all the podcast, what do you call them? Platforms. Yeah. Spotify, everything, iHeartRadio. So I always like to spell your information so that those people who are listening and not watching will be able to reach you too. Yeah, definitely when people in Atlanta just listening over the radio, they're not going to see this. So you can reach Penelope at penelopeholt.com, and that's PENELOPEHOLT.com. And all of her information, all of her social media, you can find all of that right there. All of her books, how to buy her books, where to buy her books. Do you have links to purchase the books?
I do.
There?
They're all
Awesome.
books, yeah. And they're links to Amazon.
Do you have a newsletter or a mailing list or?
I created, yes, I do. There's a submission form, and I've started to do a little bit of blogging about the research that I did for the Angel Scroll because it was so fascinating, like the story of Jesus in India. There's a book, there's a book called Jesus in India. I also have some links to YouTube documentaries or podcasts that talks about Jesus in India and presents the evidence. So what a time to be alive, hey, with all of this information at our fingertips.
I think so. I think it's great. You know, when I was younger, we certainly didn't have this. We had the encyclopedia and the dictionary.
Well,
Had an out-of-date Encyclopedia Britannica set. It took so many years for the new ones to come out. So, you didn't buy them constantly, and a library card.
Wow, library, yeah.
And I was thinking when you said you started out in the public relations, the PR thing, things have changed a lot since you started, right? I mean,
Yes.
dramatically how we're getting our information out there now.
One of the first fun jobs that I had in the 80s, late 80s, out of school was for PBS. We did mini videos called bookends. And PBS would take shows that had been on network television and they would cut out the commercials, obviously. So they'd be left with, 3 to 8 minutes that they had to fill. So we offered them these little video shorts called bookends. And it was, about a book and about an author. And back then, authors, this is part of the whole, disintermediation of publishing. And, it was the Goliath because it cost a lot of money to send an author on an author tour. They would travel around and they would do book signings. And they still do that to a certain extent. But of course, now we can do so much of it virtually. And so the publishers loved this because this was a great way of getting a little book video onto PBS. And I had a lot of fun. I remember that I went to interview a gentleman at Princeton to do a video. He'd written a book on Albert Einstein. He had been at Princeton with him and had the privilege. And it was really his reminiscences. And I just remember he said that Einstein used to say, "Subtle is the Lord, but malicious he is not." And what he was saying is that if you look closely and think very carefully, nature will give up its secrets to you. They're not maliciously hidden. You just have to look very carefully, and that always stuck with me. So yeah, that was, and faxing everything and mailing things out. There was tremendous costs associated with just getting books, and now you can just zap a PDF to somebody. So. And, the agents gatekeep. In fact, I was just looking at your book trailers and thinking, how wonderful it is that we've democratized publishing. This book is published by, the Angel Scroll is Collective Inc., which was is a publisher in England and the US, and they sort of specialize in spiritual books and I guess other genres too, but they do a lot in the spiritual. So I've done both. I've had a small publishing company to publish business books, primarily because business authors, their books are expensive. And if they do it with a publisher, they may get 10 free, but if you're a business author and your book costs $150 or $90 and you have to start buying it in order to promote it, and then you're only getting a 10% royalty, the economics don't add up. So, back in the early 2000s, I had business writers who would do a lot of speaking and they would naturally sell a lot of books, through their own efforts. They'd go to a conference. So they needed to be able to buy those books inexpensively. They didn't want to publish them themselves. They were too busy. And so I partnered with them to publish their books and allowed them to buy them at a tremendous discount so that they could actually make money off it. And that really first clued me into the power, if you can crack the code on marketing, how much more money you can make for people who self-publish. This book, this time I didn't. My last few books, I've, gone with publishers, but, economically, it's just the royalty, the 10 to 20% that you can get is, I look at people who are self-publishing and they figured out how to market and they can really make a good living for themselves. And now you have all of the tools. And of course, I'm not telling you anything that you read. The audience doesn't already know, but I am just reaffirming that over time, it's just become a lot easier for self-published people, and the economic incentives are there. And it's very democratic. I mean, how many great books never came to fruition or to be published because, an agent, some gatekeeper screened them out. In fact, you may know this, but The Martian, the movie that
Yes.
That was the first. I think he published on Amazon, and it sold 1 million copies, and then it wound up being optioned, and it was turned into a movie. And I think that was one of the first examples of a really, really big book that was self-published, if I'm correct, on Amazon, that went on to be a bestseller, and it sort of cracked the code on if you how much money you can make and how far you can go if you do it correctly.
And even if you don't go that far, you can still, if you understand the analytics of Amazon, which change every month, by the way, you can really sell a decent amount of books. And even if people just read you in Kindle Unlimited, if they're reading 3,000 to 4,000 pages of each one of your books every month, that brings in money.
Yes.
Every month. So when we first started writing, and Paul Hollis, who's one of the authors, and he's also owns a small publishing company, he always says when we all started writing around the same time, Paul Hollis and we did, and we know a number of authors that we all started out then. It was very different then. Amazon had about 2 million books. And now they have 32 million because it is so easy to indie publish now. And people are taking advantage of it. But I think they need to know what they're doing. There are a lot of programs that you can buy that can teach you all the analytics, and you can do all that yourself. It's amazing.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, there's a sort of swings and roundabouts aspect that you do have to crack the code on the algorithms, and you've got to figure it out. I mean, I know people that have published, they're making $10,000, $15,000 a month publishing books on Amazon. They're not necessarily bestsellers, but they're just, they really just know how to use the programs. And those sales mount up. The Apple, we were talking about the Apple, I recently put that on Kindle Unlimited. I've been so busy, it hadn't occurred to me. And then I just looked into it and I said, yeah, just make it available on, this was written, I think round about, Herman is passed now. I think this was about 2008. So we're going back a while. It's a perennial story. I mean, it's about the Holocaust and how Herman got into trouble by having a real Holocaust story, but then adding a kind of a fictional love story to it. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and he just drew a lot of attention to himself, and got into a lot of trouble because he had a sort of a fabrication in what was otherwise a true story. And so you get to the point that you just want people to read your work as well. You just want to get it into the hands of readers. And I think Kindle Unlimited does a great job of doing that.
Oh, yeah. I think everyone has a story to tell, whether they're an author or not. Everybody has a story to tell. And authors have stories to tell that they want to tell and they want people to hear. And whether you make a lot of money doing it or not, you want people to read your work. I mean, that in itself is an end, we often tell authors that are just beginning, don't expect to have a bestseller. And it's work to get it out there, and that's okay,
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You learn a lot of little tricks and and what bumps it up so that Amazon promotes it better than the next book. And it's a lot. But it's doable. Anybody can do it.
I think it's like anything else. It can be overwhelming, and you just have to break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
And just learn a little bit at a time. And what you said, intention, for fun, I thought I would try my hand at a romance novel. So I have a book coming out with Inkspell Authors in January called Polly Wants a Lover. And in romance before, and I thought, because this was, the Angel Scroll took a lot of work and a lot of research, and it was very heavy. And, romance is very trope driven.
Yes.
Girl, office romance, lost love. And I just thought. And
they get back together.
Yeah. And I think it's a booming genre, romance.
Oh, it's
primarily
the biggest seller.
Yeah. All different genres, very staid romance, very steamy romance.
Paranormal romance.
Paranormal, yeah. People devour it. And so it's booming, and you can't feed that beast. That's a good place to start if because they've got to feed the Harlequins of the world. They've got to feed the beast. They've got people that they gobble up these romance books week after week after week. But what you said about not expecting a bestseller, but if you're a writer, then you just want to write, and I just write. I keep writing. I put it out there, and like we were saying earlier, you make art, like Andy Warhol said. You put it out into the world, and then you make more art. And if you get hung up, obviously you've got to put work into making it a success. But if you describe, there's so many. Almost every author, it's the rare author that hits it with the first book, or they're all learning their craft. They all keep going.
Yes.
Was it Catch 22 that was turned down? There's so many stories of authors that were turned down literally by every publisher. And
most of the classics were turned down over and over again, and then they self-published. I mean, I think Mary Shelley self-published Frankenstein. Yeah. Look at that.
Right. So I'm afraid we've reached the top of our hour here.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going
that went quickly.
It did go quickly.
I know.
I'm sorry.
How do we need 5 to cover all the?
Oh yeah. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can have you on again sometime live with the live audience.
Anytime. I would love that. I think it's just, you have such an interesting story. And I wanted to actually follow up. What was the group that you used to be in? The Jesus
people.
The Jesus people.
The Jesus people.
Yeah. I really want to look into, see how, I'm curious. That's the great thing, these conversations. This is another rabbit I can go down.
I think there's a movie about it on Netflix right now, as a matter of fact. Actually the whole group that we were part of in California.
Wow. I will look into that. But thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us.
It's
been fascinating.
It is.
So we're going to move you over like that. And let's see. But join us next week. Same time, same place. And until next time, that's all,
Goodbye, folks.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at Fresh.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-D.